Dalia from Borderless Jobs. We're coming now to the start of January 2024. Brand new year, very exciting. Lots of different changes, many in the immigration sphere. The UK immigration authorities have really decided to look at the entire immigration population that's been coming into the UK. We can see now how there has been a massive rise of visas that have been issued over 2023. It's shot up to around 700,000 visas. And so today I just want to really focus on a few of those quite important changes that are going to affect people today, specifically our subscribers that we work with every day, and that we try to inform them of the journey of how to come to the UK. So I'm going to go through just some of those now updates, and we can go through exactly what they mean. And obviously, if you've got any questions, then shoot them over to us at Borderless Jobs, and we will help you. As OISC advisors, we are eligible to give you specific advice. So let's just go over a couple of the things that they've mentioned, which are quite important, and then we can discuss them more in detail. So on the 4th of December, we do know that the Home Secretary did announce a few very important changes to the UK immigration rules. Net immigration has leveled right now to a record level of, as I said before, around 745,000 in 2022, and so now the government are looking to see how we can review whether all of those visas were issued to people that are actually contributing to the UK. We still have massive vacancies in the UK and shortages, and that's only growing. So we can see that as more construction projects and net zero projects, the UK is going to have thousands and thousands more vacancies, and they will have to find a solution. We are there in order to implement the solution of bringing over from overseas and assisting them with the immigration process through our tech platform. But the UK employers are going to have to really look hard at those solutions. So what are the immigration rule changes that they have announced? So the Home Secretary, Mr. James Cleverly, he announced the following. From the 16th of January, this is something that we've actually known beforehand, the IHS, which is the Immigration Health Surcharge, will substantially increase. And we know this, and we've had many clients already saying to us, please push your applications faster so that we won't have to endure those huge increases. But they are going to be increased from £624 per adult a year up to £1,035 a year. Once again, I've mentioned this in a couple of our blogs beforehand that have gone out. Doesn't actually, if you spread over those fees over a 5-year period or a 3-year period, and you do understand what it actually allows you to do, which is the full capacity to use all of the National Health Service in every way possible, then if you look to other countries and compare that, for example, for your insurance, your medical insurance that you would need, for example, for the US, it's probably a third of the price, showing that the UK is still offering a very good package. It is mandatory though, and the mandatory issue does require that if you are coming on a visa to the UK, you will need to lay out that in advance, and that is a hefty amount to lay out in advance. But otherwise, how does the immigration authorities in the UK, or how does the National Health Service secure that you will effectively have paid it in advance before you arrive, and they're not going to have to necessarily charge you once you get to the UK? And again, that can be the situation where, for example, in the US, you can, have broken your arm or God forbid something more, and then you will be actually afraid to call an ambulance to take you to the hospital because you will be given a bill for $10,000 for one day. So in the UK, they don't want to get to that point, and they just essentially say, if you do want to come here, you have to show us in advance that you can pay for and cover your medical insurance if and when you need that. And don't forget, and I think we've got a blog around this, which I'll be happy to link to this, that it does allow you essentially also to use a lot of national health services, including even pharmaceutical services and dentists, and obviously the emergency room, God forbid that you would need that. So let's just focus on that once again. The IHS from the 16th of January, meaning that once you receive your certificate of sponsorship and you then go and apply for your visa application, you will need to cover and have in advance payment to cover that £624 per year. So if you're there for 2 or 3 or 5 years, you will need that amount, and that's the amount that you'll need for an adult. And so if you and your spouse are coming together, you will need to cover that. So make sure your credit card does obviously charge. You can charge different credit cards at that point, but the entire amount for the 5 years will go out together. The second most important immigration rule that has been changing is the minimum threshold for the skilled worker route. What does exactly that mean? Okay, what is the salary threshold? That means that if you are an employer and you are applying for a foreign worker to come to join you in your UK organization, the salary threshold is something which is, according to the law, the minimum that you can essentially pay that position. And the going rate is something that the Home Office publish. And so obviously, for example, for certain positions, it's going to be different from other positions. But if the going rate for the position that you are allocating that certificate of sponsorship for that foreign employee to come to the UK is today 26,200, you will not be granted a certificate of sponsorship if you're offering them 26,200. You will have to offer them a higher salary, and the minimum salary will be 38,700. And it's a huge change. I mean, I think that's just over, I think they said it's around 50%. Why are they doing this? There's a lot of reasons behind it. But one of the essential issues is that if you're bringing over these such low salary applicants, first of all, they're very fearful that they will actually be able to contribute in the UK on that salary. It's very difficult to prove that you can live in the UK, especially in areas such as central London, on a salary of £26,200. You will just not be able to pay for your accommodation, your livelihood, your children's education. It just won't work. So 38,700 will be something that effectively will allow you to come over from abroad. You won't be in a shock situation where you won't be able to afford even a local accommodation. But nevertheless, what they're also looking at is the actual partners that are coming over. If you're bringing over your spouse, it shows, and it's been proven, that those low threshold salaries for those low threshold positions are bringing in lower educated people to the UK, meaning a lot of the time their partner is not working in the UK. So that means you're having two people living off a salary of 26,200. It's just not enough. So the government is saying we need to limit now these record levels of net migration coming, and we do want to allow skilled and talented and hardworking, dedicated people to come to the UK, but the minimum salary we require is going to be 38,700. This is going to affect a huge amount of industries. I think specifically those that rely on the employees that they're paying around the 26,000. And I think that generally, I mean, the biggest hit is going to be in the education department, because they are just not going to be able to find teachers as they are today. and also pay them higher salaries. It's going to range from the nursery schools to the secondary schools. And I think that's going to be the hardest hit. And I don't know what the government is going to do around these areas. But what they have said is that the second industry that we were very fearful would be affected by that was the care industry and the health and care industry. And they said with them, they are not going to change the minimum salary threshold for the health and care industry, which are suffering so badly really today. But there are going to be other regulations for the health and care industry, which they have specifically said. And this is to avoid exploitation of workers that we have now seen are happening all over and throughout the UK, which is so sad, because essentially what the health and care industry are saying is that they're desperate for workers. So why, in effect, if they're so desperate for workers, are they exploiting the only workers that actually come and work for them for such low salaries? I have no idea. But the government eventually has actually jumped on this, and they've said we are going to look into this harder. And one of the things I think that they're really saying is now that health and social care agencies must be regulated by the Care Quality Commission, or otherwise known as the CQC. Let's just go into that a little bit, and what does that mean, a CQC registration? And again, this is something that the statement of the Home Secretary came out with: care firms in England to be regulated by the Care Quality Commission in order to sponsor visas. So that means that only a health and care organisation that falls under the scope of the CQC regulation will be able to sponsor care worker applications. There are some exceptions outside the scope of regulation. I can go into that afterwards, or I can show you exactly what that means. But that includes the provision of personal care or nursing in cases where a care worker or a nurse works directly for the individual receiving care, or a third party acting on their behalf. That usually won't fall under the immigration regulations anyway, because individuals cannot sponsor for individuals to come. So it's a little bit silly kind of to mention that the exploitation won't go under that area. But nevertheless, I think that's also something that everybody now says must be focused on. Organisations that should and must register if you carry on intending to have regulated activity are local authorities, NHS trusts, registered companies or charities, all LLPs, or all corporate bodies. And these are just a number of the organisations that must be registered under the CQC in order to be able to sponsor foreign workers in the future. Another one of the announcements, which was quite interesting, was actually about the graduate the graduate visa, which they also said that they're going to have a look at that now. So I don't quite understand why they were talking about the abuse, but they're going to review the entire graduate route, because they are scared that there is abuse in the graduate route today, and they're going to try to prevent that abuse. So we're not quite sure exactly why, because the graduate visa is really a fantastic visa for anybody who's actually studying, finished their studies, and wants to go and get a job in the UK, and allows them that 2 years in order to really use their their degree that they've studied, and maybe even pay off some of the higher education bills that they've gradually had to pay over the last few years. But essentially, even if we look at the numbers today, and I think that they actually say the vast majority of international students, which is around 80%, actually leave the UK within 5 years of arrival. So not everybody is staying in the UK. I mean, it's a good way to bring people in and to show them and to learn, but most people, and they actually proved it, about 80% of the international students do actually leave within 5 years. So I'm not quite sure exactly what they're talking about the abuse, and I've actually read a very interesting article from Harry Anderson, the Assistant Director, Policy and Global Engagement. Thanks, Harry, for that article. Really interesting about, the government's launching into international strategies, looking for that abuse. Not quite sure exactly where the abuse is. So there's going to be some form of review through the MAC, the Migration Advisory Committee, and they're going to be looking into it. But according to Harry Anderson and his article, it says here that the graduate route has been a resounding success. So when something is a success, why change it? Not quite sure about where that, but we're going to follow on the graduate route. And we do feel that that is a very good route for all educated students. I mean, you do get those students that finish university and they say, look, my only reason for coming to the UK and studying is actually to stay here and get a passport in the end. And those people, obviously, they don't want to stay any longer on their student visa and they don't want to stay on their graduate visa because they do want to start incurring physical presence in the UK. And those people are definitely looking for the skilled worker visa, but that's what it's there for, right? Another issue that they're going to be talking about here is the shortage occupation list, and that again is what the MAC. As I said before, the MAC is the Migration Advisory Committee. So the MAC is the committee that they review whether an actual occupation is definitely in shortage in the UK. And so what they've said is there is a specific list, which is called the shortage occupation list, that you can actually pay paid up to 20% less than the going rate of the role. So if your position has moved from the regular eligibility to get a certificate of sponsorship over to the shortage occupation, meaning that there is a definite need, then actually what that allows is that the employer can pay up to 20% less for you to come over. I don't see the logic in that. I think that if an employer is desperate to hire somebody and it's so difficult, then he should actually pay the going rate like everybody else. It shouldn't be exploiting somebody from overseas and paying them less than what they would usually get. But nevertheless, the government did try that, but eventually I think that they've seen a bit of sense and now they're going to get rid of that. So this abolishment of the doctrine, that's what they're going to call it. And hopefully that basically means that there are going to be the option of having these jobs on the shortage list, and everybody will know about them, but you still have to pay the going rate, which is always much lower than actually what is actually being paid today. I mean, for example, even if you look at a construction worker or you look at a builder or a bricklayer, I mean, according to the eligibility rule today, then they need to be paid around £28,000. Well, I mean, I can't find a builder who's willing to work for less than £50,000. But I think the going rate is definitely something that we should stick to. And definitely, I agree with abolishing this. Well, if you're coming from overseas, we're going to pay you less. I mean, I think you'd probably pay them more. Thank you very much for coming over and dedicating your life to actually working hard and helping us with these vacancies, because we wouldn't be able to continue to run our business without you coming over. I mean, I always look at the situation if you're a high, one of the top VCs or banks in the world, and you want to bring over somebody for one of your executive positions. Sometimes, I mean, you offer them double or triple what you would be paying somebody in the UK just to bring them over. So where does the logic come to actually pay them less? Not sure about that. Don't really get that. And I'm very happy that the government are abolishing that doctrine, because I think it just it feeds on those companies that try to exploit the migrant workers by paying them a ridiculous salary in the UK. So the idea between all of these kind of changes is generally to try to reduce net migration by around 300,000. They believe that if they do that, then less people are going to be coming to the UK. I don't believe that's happening. I believe that actually with the increase of all of the construction projects in the UK, with the increase of the necessity in desperation for more vacancies in the UK in the health sector, in the restaurant sector, in the engineering sector, I think we're going to see more and more people coming to the UK, but hopefully we will see much more skilled, dedicated, educated contributors. And that's definitely something that we need here in the UK. And we are happy to engage. And so generally, those are really the updates for you guys. I'm not going to go really into anything about the spousal visas. Oh, there is one issue that I didn't mention that is actually quite is actually going to be quite tough. And that is, unfortunately, individuals issued the visas for the health and social care worker will no longer, and I'm focusing on that again, no longer be able to bring their family dependents. Meaning that if you are married and you have children and you have just got offered a job as a care worker or a health worker or a social worker in the UK, you will not be able to come to the UK and sponsor your spouse or your children. Unfortunately, either they will have to be sponsored themselves or they will have to stay back home. So that's going to be some dramatic changes for specifically families. I know, and I've heard that there are going to be legal organizations that are going to be trying to eventually appeal that, because they believe that in regards to the law, that's just not going to be acceptable to break up families. But I mean, honestly, I know that this happens in many countries all over the world. It's something that's quite acceptable in many other countries. So sometimes the UK will look at other immigration rules in other countries, and they will say, well, how are they doing it? And if it is acceptable in other countries, I don't know how far it's going to get with the legal system and the appeal. And so if that's going to be the change of the law, either make sure that you apply for your visa quickly before the changes go in, or you have to explain or not take the job, or explain that the part of your purpose is coming over, working hard, and then going back to your family at the end of that period or over your vacation time. So yeah, that's quite a harsh change. So I think I've gone over most of the changes. I'm going to leave it at that now. Any questions that you have, obviously send us over. We're happy to help, happy to answer. We here are to prepare you for that journey, for coming over to the UK. We're going to be giving you more and more information in the next few weeks about partnerships that we've started to make with some really, really great international companies, including Verimark, for example, including MVQ Construction, including Bank of India. We're really excited to show you about all of the different partnerships, which will be there essentially in order for you, before coming to the UK, to prepare yourself, to get ready, to understand that, for example, if you're a doctor, there's no point in applying for a doctor's position unless you've passed your PLAB or your GMC. You just won't be able to get a job. If you're, for example, a construction worker, there's no point in you applying for a job in a construction site in the UK without you having got your NVQ construction health and safety. So we're here in order to prepare you, to get you ready, so that when you do get to meet your employer in the future, you can wow him and buzz him away with all of your understanding, your preparation. You can show him that you're ready to start working and you have all the credentials ready. So we'll send you all the information that we have on our new partnerships with all of our new companies. We're really excited about that in 2024. And just we're here to wish you all a happy new year, safe, peaceful with your families. And we will be updating you with all the new updates that are happening soon.